Well, holy shit. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. Now I won't tell you how I celebrated this little but important achievement, but you have to know that vodka is no longer strong enough to wash down this endless ocean of diarrhea, aka content of fitness influencers and self-improvement gurus. So... If you have eyes and internet connection, chances are that you're being bombarded with photos and reels of the biggest and most influential faces in the fitness world. And although you initially looked at them in the first few months of your fitness journey for motivation, that motivation quickly turned into a severe form of body dysmorphia and self-hatred, which is somehow its own kind of motivation if you're honest. Now, despite this modern trend of body positivity, which is all about accepting yourself as you are and says that appearance is entirely subjective and that it doesn't matter if you are a 400-pound land whale or a Greek god. Yet somehow you still find yourself throbbing when you see the latest post from David Lade or Jeff Sight and not so much from Nicocado Avocado, if he's still alive. Bruh. Okay, I know that this comparison was a bit extreme and absurd, but I just couldn't resist the opportunity to shit on this pinnacle of modern society. What I actually wanted to say is that even among the most famous physiques on social media, some of them just stand out distinctly. And the answer to the question, why is that so, is quite simple. Human beings just love and appreciate aesthetics. Now, because I don't consider myself an open-minded artist, I won't blabber on about aesthetics in this field, since I don't want to be attacked by some blue-haired freethinkers who gaze at the stars while sitting in the puddle of their own urine and are on permanent cutting season since their teenage years. And I'm not talking about calorie deficit. But by some stroke of luck, I just happen to know a thing or two about aesthetics in the terms of human body and its muscular development. If you are the OG fan of this channel, like you should be, you probably remember that I've already made a very similar video a few months ago, where I talked about how so-called training for aesthetics is complete nonsense, and it's used by self-proclaimed fitness gurus as clickbait, which ultimately ends up being 10 minutes of yapping about the most logical and generally known basics of hypertrophy training. However, today I'll try to explain as clearly as possible and with a bit more detail what makes an aesthetic physique. I don't want to brag or anything, but I'm pretty sure that this is the only video about aesthetics that you'll ever have to watch in order to understand it once and for all. We'll look at and rank by importance the characteristics that make up this desirable aesthetic physique and explain why some of the most famous fitness personalities stand out so much. But before I begin, let me warn you that to some extent this aesthetic physique is indeed subjective, and I will completely understand if you don't agree with me on certain points. In a video like this, I have to especially emphasize this because such discussions infuriate some individuals to the point where they very clearly described in the comments what should I do to myself and in what way I should shorten my existence on this planet just because they disagree with me. But in their defense, some of the things we'll be discussing today are truly a hard pill to swallow due to the fact that most of these things depend heavily on your genetics. So if you're one of those super sensitive butterflies and sunshines, now is the time to click off, because it's body dysmorphing time. We are going in raw, boys.
Yeah, boy.
No, I'm just kidding, it's not that serious, but in 2024 you can never be too careful. Now, as you probably guessed, the most important characteristics of an aesthetic body is your shoulder-to-waist ratio, and not just shoulder width. In the gym bro language, this is called the V-taper. Why? Well, imagine the bottom part of the letter V as your waist and the upper part as your shoulders. So the greater this ratio, the greater the illusion of aesthetics. And by illusion, I mainly mean that someone who may have slightly less muscle mass but a better shoulder-to-waist ratio will look better or more eye-pleasing than someone who may have more muscle mass but a poorer shoulder-to-waist ratio. And no, I'm not making this up. In fact, several studies have shown that men with a better V-taper are perceived as more attractive when it comes to their physique. I know for a fact that if C-Bum and Arnold were to compete against each other today, and let's pretend that they're both in their primes, one of the many reasons for Chris's undeniable victory would be his insanely good shoulder-to-waist ratio. And now we came to the first part of this video that will trigger some people who just can't come to terms with the following fact. If you don't have genetically narrow/small waist, all you can do is to train certain muscle groups that give you this wide look more than other muscle groups and try to create the illusion of smaller waist. And even if you do everything right and train properly, you can only create this illusion to some extent. Now what does that mean? That means that someone who won the genetic lottery when it comes to having small waist and wide shoulders will always beat someone with rather thick waist when it comes to aesthetics. Obviously, if the first guy doesn't train and sits on the couch all day, he will look like shit despite his genetics. I know that. When I'm giving you examples, I'm assuming that both guys are training and eating properly. And I'm sure that everybody who actually has years of experience in the gym or is coaching people would agree on this one with me. Just like Greg Doucette says, you can't train genetics. So much for the V-taper, I hope you understand it now. Let's move on to the second most important thing. Muscle insertions. Let me reiterate that this is a very close second, at least in my opinion. And again, this is the area that you have unfortunately very little control over. Now, the muscle insertion is the point where a muscle attaches to the bone, or even better, the bone that moves during the action. For example, biceps insertion is at the bottom part of your biceps. In other words, at the joint. So how do muscle insertions influence the aesthetic appearance of the body? Well, let's put it this way. The location of muscle insertion will determine the shape and size of individual muscles. So muscles with higher insertions, or longer muscle bellies if you want, will therefore appear longer and in some cases more defined, while those with lower insertions or shorter muscle bellies may appear, guess what, shorter and bulkier. Fun fact, this also has an effect on your strength potential, because a shorter muscle means less surface and therefore less strength potential. Again, we have to take personal preferences to the account here, since some individuals prefer having, for example, high biceps peak rather than full biceps, but in most cases, biceps with higher insertion or longer belly will have this more aesthetic look. And the same goes for triceps, chest, lats, etc. Now, for all of you visual learners, let's see who among the most famous fitness personalities has great muscle insertions. First one, David Late. Arms, legs, chest, need I say more? The perfect example of someone who is genetically blessed with high muscle insertions. Andrew Eubanks. Same thing, high muscle insertions everywhere and therefore this amazing aesthetic look. Joffrey Verity Schofield. I have to mention him here because of his arms. Again, this is a product of amazing insertions and years of hard work. Another fun fact, he is the only one of the three who is actually natural and is somehow the biggest. And as I said before, insertions are 100% dependent on your genetics. You can't train to make your biceps longer or to get rid of the gap on your chest. However, the latter can be covered up to some extent when you have more muscle mass. Alright, that's enough about muscle insertions. Let's move on if you haven't left yet, because your body dysmorphia reached its peak in the past 5 minutes. But look guys, let me calm you down. Does it really matter? Because all that separates us from being vaporized is Mr. Vladimir having a bad breakfast. The third thing, muscle symmetry. For the most part, symmetry is the product of your muscle insertions. So abs, chest and back muscles is where your symmetry matters the most. Why? Because this is where you notice symmetry or asymmetry first. I mean, let's be honest, almost nobody is going to notice if your left triceps is half an inch shorter or longer than your right triceps. Why am I putting symmetry on the third place? Because you can still get away with some minor flaws if you have good V-taper and good insertions. Back to David Late, his abs are not perfectly symmetrical and he still has one of the most, if not the most aesthetic physique in the fitness industry. The fourth and the last thing here is your body fat percentage. And to be honest, I didn't even want to include this one at first because it's so obvious, but I decided to leave it here anyway. And that's for two reasons. And the first reason is because, well, it's the only one of these four things that you can actually control. And I know it's harder to get lean for some people, for example body activists who weigh a metric ton by default. But with some adjustments in your diet, it's really not that hard to get lean, trust me. The second reason why I'm mentioning body fat percentage is because here is where people are very fucking delusional. And what I mean by that is that literally everyone fails to understand that they are not as lean as they think they are. I mean, people who claim to be 8% body fat are actually 10 or more. Those who claim to be 10% are actually 14, 15, etc. And those who claim to be 15, which is supposed to be this healthy G-spot for men, are actually actually fucking 18 or 20% body fat. And one of the reasons for that are those DEXA scans and other ways of body fat measurement that are in most cases wrong by at least 3%. So I'm going to quote Coach Greg again here. Whatever body fat percentage you think you are, add at least 3% and now you're closer to the actual number. Now before I end this video, I want to address one more thing. And like I said, I made a video about that a few months ago, but I will repeat it because it's very important. And I'm talking about all those I train for aesthetics guys, or I'm not training to be mass monster, I don't want to get too big, I just want to look like Jeff Sight. I mean seriously, when I hear that I envy the death. And I know in a second that whoever is saying that has no fucking idea what he's talking about. It's the same as saying I'm a douchebag, don't listen to me, and I'm not even joking. So if you're one of those guys by some chance and you're watching this video right now, let me enlighten you, champ. How do you get the physique of C-Bum? More than amazing genetics, years of consistency, proper training and nutrition, and PEDs. How do you get the Jeff Sight's physique? More than amazing genetics, years of consistency, you train exactly the same as Chris Bumstead and every IFBB pro for that matter, and some mild PED usage. Do you see where this is going? So please forget this, I don't want to get too big, I just want to be aesthetic. Seriously. The only exception here is if you are super short and you have this bulky frame, which is again genetics, because you can maybe get too big or too bulky for your own taste, but that's very rare, so yeah. What should I say for the end? Was the purpose of this video to demotivate you? Absolutely fucking not. I will repeat this. You can build an amazing body with years of dedication. Even if you have the shittiest genetics possible and you train your ass off, you are going to be in the top 5% of the world when it comes to physiques. Just please don't expect to look like all those freaks you see on Instagram every day. People still don't realize how significant a role genetics plays here. And sometimes even genetics is not enough, because let's be honest, most of these individuals I mentioned in this video are using some kind of PEDs. So yes, subscribing to this channel will raise your IQ by 10 points, I guarantee you. If you like this video you can share it, and until next time.